Rainy, can you mute? We'll wait just a couple minutes to get everybody in here. I'm going to start with the warm up so you guys can pull that up. Okay, we're going to start the warm up. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, start. 2 minutes. Should still be using the same document as before, just this is this week's. One minute. Forty seconds. About 20 seconds left. Try to finish up. Okay, time is up. Okay, so let me share with you the happenings for the week. So today we are going to finish our PowerPoint or slide, Google slide, and do our guided notes and get those turned in. But along with that, there'll be an assignment that goes with the We're going to talk about cooking terms today, so there'll be a worksheet that goes along with that. And then that'll also be due before we meet again. I believe it's due Tuesday by midnight. So you'll have probably some class time to work on it today. And then whatever you don't get finished, you can get to me before Tuesday at midnight. So I am going to do a demonstration today, and I just with my schedule and things, I just realized that I probably am going to have to keep it virtual as far as pre-taping it. So our next recipe that I'm going to cook is pineapple upside down cake. So I'll be making that, and we'll be participating with the demo page on Wednesday. So that's going to be the next recipe that I will be making. A couple just announcements for the cream puffs and custard. A lot of you just did one, and it was supposed to be cream puffs and custard. If you wanted to do the meringue drops, it would have been extra credit. But a lot of you just did the custard or just the cream puffs, but you had to do both. So you received half credit if you did one or the other. You can still go back and fix it. Just email me and let me know that corrections have been made so that I can go back and look at it. Just a couple things. When you are doing them, I had maybe one or two people that copied and pasted a recipe in. That's not going to work. It's got to be the one that I did in class that I demonstrated. That's why I have you do the demo page when I make it so that you can follow along. It's nothing that you are going to be able to Google, okay? So I can Google too and find out that it was Googled. So don't be doing that. And then a couple other things with the ingredients, always make sure you put the amounts. It should be in a list format, just like it always is on any recipe. You have the list of ingredients and the amounts, and then the directions. It probably is best to have the amounts in the directions just to recap and reinforce that you need 1 cup of flour. So just try to always follow through with that, because some people are like doing it in sentence form, or they're like making a list outward instead of like making a list up and down. And that's really important that we do that, okay? Any questions that you have on the demo page from previous? Everyone is good with that? Okay, so let me show you some of the things I've scored so that you're aware, because our class needs to get some work in. So let me, gosh, I hate that noise. Okay, so let's just go to Classroom and look at what you need to turn in. So for Culinary, the demo cream puffs I've already scored. Equivalency worksheet I scored. Recipe corrections, this one I'm still working on because I had you guys revise it. So now I have to go back and regrade it. So that's taking me a little bit of time. Warm-ups from the last time, my job, your job, selfie intro. So these are everything that I've scored so far. So what's going to be going in there probably in the next day or two are the guided notes, the cooking terms that we're going to do today as an assignment, the demo page. So those are just some things to look for. And then we're going to finish up we did a document that it was like a 5-question, I can show it to you just so that you have it. It was a 5-question page right here, recipe questions, and we'll finish that today too. Okay, so just so you know, so there's the recipe questions we'll finish today. The cooking terms will be your new assignment. You're going to use your notes to do it. And that's kind of where we're going at this point. So any questions in the chat or anything that you have for the good of the order before we start? We're all good? Everyone's doesn't have any questions or concerns? Okay, then I need you to pull up your guided notes from the Google Classroom. Pull those out. And we got all the way through up until important terms of intent. So that's where we left off. So you need to pull those out because you will be needing to fill them out and do them with the activity at the end here. So I'm going to pull open my PowerPoint here. Okay, so let's see. Is Brian here today? No, I don't think I saw him. How about Jenna? Are you here? Jenna.
Yeah.
Okay. Be my MC, just let me know if you can't hear me or I'm not presenting my screen or somebody says something in the chat. Can you be that MC today?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. So we're just going to continue on. I didn't leave a lot of spaces for you to kind of fill in because when we get down to the bottom, there's just a lot, and I just didn't want to burden you all with all that. So just kind of bear with me as I run through it, and then I'll give you your assignment. You'll be on your way today, okay? So we need to talk about terms when it comes to oven temperatures. So if we ever talk about a speck or a few grains, usually recipes will say it that way, or they'll say FG. And so you need to remember that it's less than 1/8 of a teaspoon. Okay, so that's what you would need to write in there. A dash is usually less than 1/16 teaspoon, so it's almost like taking a pinch and putting it in whatever it is you're making. Oven temperatures include, if it's between 250 and 300 degrees, it's considered very slow temperatures. So usually if I was cooking something and I was trying to hold it for, like, let's say when my kids got out of practice or something, I might put it at 200, 250 just because I want to keep it warm, but I'm not really cooking it per se. 300 to 325 is considered slow temperature. 350 to 75 is moderate. 400 to 425 is hot, and 450 to 475 is considered very hot. I think I had all those in there for you. Okay, so let's talk about techniques for mixing. So if we're talking about alternating, that means one ingredient and then the other. So sometimes a recipe will tell you to alternate. Then you have, I'm going to sneeze. Okay, then you have mix, combine, blend. So that usually means to thoroughly mix ingredients using a spoon, a wire whisk, a rotary beater, or electric mixer. Rotary beater is, in the old-fashioned terms, I have some in the kitchen if you really need to see it, but it's like something that you would do yourself, and it would be just like beaters per se, but it's kind of an old tool that not many people use anymore. Stir is to mix by hand. You could also mix with a spoon or a wire whisk. Bottom of the pan and distributing heat throughout the food. So that's stirring. I did a lot of that when I did the custard, so I'm stirring it. Beat to thoroughly mix food. You can do that with a spoon, a wire whisk, electric mixer, using vigorous over and over motion. Cream to blend ingredients together with until soft and smooth. So when I make chocolate chip cookies, I usually am doing
Miss Bethka?
Yeah. I didn't click the slide. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. And someone asked, what did you say alternate was again?
Oh, okay. It's on the screen now. So that's why, yeah, sorry, I was getting into my groove, you know. Sorry. I got a little carried away, I guess. So alternate, yeah, it's at the top of the screen, so hopefully you can see that. Sorry. Oh boy. Okay. Anyway, I was saying that I do chocolate chip cookies. And so I usually do like sugar, it calls for sugar and brown sugar and then butter. And I always cream that first. So like I make the sugars really get blended in with the margarine. And so eventually you can't really see the sugars anymore. You're like creaming them together. So it kind of looks like cream. Knead is to work dough with hands to further mix ingredients and develop gluten. So gluten is you're putting air in the food. So that's knead. Let me flip my page. I think I gave you all the rest. Okay, so you have those. All right, I'm going to click my screen now because I remembered this time. Okay, so another mixing terms would be whip, and that is to incorporate air into a mixture until light and fluffy. Fold is to cut down through a mixture, moving utensils across the bottom of the bowl and bringing it back up. So some recipes do call for that because they don't want things to be like all blended in. They just want you to kind of fold it in into the product. Sift is to add air. Sometimes you use sifting to remove lumps or to mix two ingredients together. Sometimes cakes, you want them really airy and fluffy, so sometimes you sift the flour or something along those lines. Constantly, all the time. So that was one you needed to write in. Cutting in is to mix solid fat and flour. So usually last year, if you guys remember doing the pie crust, we cut in the fats when we were doing that with the flour and things. And so it kind of became almost sand-like, but it was really blended in. So we call that cutting it in. Kneading, you don't need to do that twice. I don't know how it got in there twice, but it did. And I'm adding one to that, marble. So if you could just add that in, I got a few of those today. So when we marble is to gently swirl one food into another. It's usually done with a light and a dark batter, like for cakes or cookies. So you want to marble. So that one I'm asking you to write in. So you'd have to, I don't necessarily need you to put the bullet point there unless you want it to be universal, but yeah, add marble. Jenna, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Excellent. So, and again, it's not vital that you write everything out. So you could just say to gently swirl one food into another, and that would be fine. You don't always have to write every little detail that I have on there, as long as it makes sense to you, and you could explain it, then it's fine. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. So I hope you got marble, to gently swirl one food into another. And we're going to now start on the next set of cooking terms. And this one is techniques for cutting. So this one, slice is to cut food in large, thin pieces. To pare or peel is to cut off the skin or the peel. So I'm peeling an apple or something like that. When you score something, you're making thin cuts in the surface of food. A lot of times it helps tenderize the meat. And then I'm adding two on this one, snip and butterfly. So again, you know, write what makes sense to you. So if you just wanted to write to cut food, often fresh herbs or dried food with kitchen shears into very small, uniform pieces using short, quick strokes. So you're snipping. And then butterfly, like sometimes you can do a chicken breast and butterfly it, to split foods in the middle without completely separating the halves, and then spreading the halves to resemble a butterfly. And those two are additionals, so you'll need to add those in. Let me know if that doesn't make sense or you need more clarification.
No one said anything, so I think we're all good.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I'll give you about 30 more seconds and then I'm going to move on to the next slide. And remember, these are all being recorded too, so if you don't catch something, you can always go right to my YouTube channel and look at it that way. Okay, I'm going to move on. Hopefully you got the gist of those. Okay, more chopping techniques or cutting techniques, chopping or mincing. So to cut food into small irregular pieces, when you mince, you are, making them really small. So I look at like garlic is something that you typically mince. So you're like kind of breaking it up, the aroma, flavor is coming out and being able to go into your food. So you're mincing it. Cube or dice is to cut into small pieces. So if you're cubing something, it's about a 1/2 inch, and if you're dicing something, it's about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. So it's a little bit smaller when you dice versus cube. Look at cube as like, a dice or something like that. They do sell cheese now that's been cubed. So if you've been to the store recently, you might have noticed that. Grated or shredded is to cut food into small, thin pieces. Usually you use a grater to do this. So at our school, we have like a metal grater and you just run the cheese along it. We did that last year, I think, with pizza. We grated our cheese. But nowadays, it's all grated for you. You don't necessarily have to do that. And then our one that I added on this side was julienne, and that's to cut food into thin match-like sticks. Usually you'll see like carrots that are julienne. Those are the ones that come to mind. Maybe like cold slaw, like a cabbage or a beet or something like that, a radish. Sometimes they do that just to make them look pretty and smaller pieces. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. If you're not ready, then take your mic off and say, wait a second, because I can. Okay. Cooking methods. Got a few lines here. So baking is, most of us know we're going to be in the oven if we're baking. Boiling is large, consistent bubbles that form and rise to the surface and break. Braising, and it combines frying with a long period of simmering, and they do that to tenderize foods and add moisture. Broiling is usually the top coil of your oven, and you can put your oven on broil, and so it's really high heat, direct high heat. So a lot of times if I'm doing something that I want to, like let's say I was making lasagna and I wanted the cheese on top to not be burnt, but, have like, be melted nicely and look like it's done. So lightly brown, that would be using that direct heat to do that, okay? Or a lot of times I'll broil, let's say, salmon or tilapia type of fish, because you can cook it that way really quickly, and because it's right there by the heat. Deep fat frying, I always would refer to like French fries, give you an example of that, but you're immersing whatever food it is into the hot fat or hot grease. I think that's supposed to be fry it until it's done, not friend it. Pan boiling is cooking food in a pan and under direct heat. So you would put it in your, so you see a lot of this with the cooking shows where they have the fry pan and then they put it in the oven under that direct heat to cook it a little bit further. You'll usually see them do that. And I think the only one that you had to define in this one was boiling, so I think we're good to go to the next slide. Okay, and then on this slide, I didn't add anything more either. So pan frying, I just answered that. Oh no, pan broiling. Okay. Similar to saute, but usually involves large foods. So that you'll see the difference between pan frying and sauteing here. Pressure cooking, that's pretty popular nowadays. People want to buy a pressure cooker and it's cooking under pressure. So things are cooking a lot faster because you're using that pressure to tenderize it, whatever it is. Roasting, usually, you'll roast your turkey at Thanksgiving, but it's cooking large tender cuts of meat or poultry in the oven. Sauteing, to brown or cook food in a skillet with small amounts of fat. Simmer. So whenever we make rice, we always simmer it. So we bring it to a boil, we add the rice, and then we turn the temperature way down to just let it simmer. So the bubbles that gently rise and just begin to break the surface. Steam, cooking food over but not in boiling water. So when I make, let's say, broccoli that's fresh, I will put like a strainer in the saucepan and I'll put water on the bottom and cover it and just let it boil there, till it's tender. And so that's what I'm using, the steam to heat through the broccoli, and I'm using it so that it's not overcooking the broccoli. You can overcook it, but it just helps the food tenderize and keep its nutrients and things like that. Stir fry is combining frying and moist heat. And you want to usually use very small pieces of food. Like if I was doing like a chicken stir fry, I would cut the vegetables really small and I would cut the chicken into like cubes just so it cooks fast. So you want to be aware of that. A lot of times they'll have you cook the meat because it takes longer to cook, and set that aside and then do the veggies and then combine them all together so that you're kind of stir frying them towards the end of the cooking process. Because if you put the vegetables in first and then with the chicken and things, the vegetables will get overdone and they won't have any nutritional value because they'll be overcooked, and they won't be good either because they'll be mushy. Nothing worse than a mushy vegetable. And okay, here we go. Okay, so some other techniques that I have for you are to baste. Turn the page. Baste, and that is to brush or pour liquid off food as it cooks. So, you're doing this probably with your turkey. You're taking some of what the drippings from the turkey and soaking them up and then putting it over the food. Helps with flavor and keeps it moist. If you're chilling something, obviously you're going to put it in the refrigerator. Coming to mind right now would be like Jell-O. So you need to make Jell-O and then cool it in the fridge, or chill it. Cool, let food stay on the counter until it's no longer hot. Cover food product. Cut out. So I don't know if you remember this from last year, but we did cookies and we use cookie cutters. So that would be considered cutting out. You could do that with biscuits, finger Jell-O. Sometimes people use cookie cutters for that. The two I'm adding to this slide are sear and stew. And so when you sear something is to brown a food, usually meat quickly on all sides using high heat to seal in the juices. And when you stew something, you cook food in liquid for a long time until it's tender. So like beef stew, I always think around like in the olden days when they used to, go on long trips, they would, put over the campfire like a beef stew or something like that with vegetables and a meat or something like that. And so you're cooking it for a long time. It's really, taking in all the flavors, and it's tenderizing that meat. So those would be two I'd like you to add in, please. Again, don't write every single thing. You could put to sear, to brown a food, usually meat quickly. To stew, cook food for a long time until tender. That would be fine. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click unless somebody wants to put a 1 in the chat, which means you're not ready. And then Jenna will tell me. Okay.
Someone's not ready.
Okay. If you're the one that put the 1 in the chat, let us know when you are so we can move forward.
They're ready. You can move on now.
Thank you. Okay, so other techniques. So we have dissolve, and that is to stir and dry ingredients into liquid until they disappear. Drain, to allow liquids to be removed from a solid food, like a colander or a large strainer, depending on, what it calls for. Obviously, if I was doing spaghetti and I wanted to drain the water off the noodles, I would use a colander. But if I was using, like the only thing that comes to mind right now, if I was sprinkling and I needed to use the strainer for that, I would probably use that for like powdered sugar or something like that. But, I would probably do the strainer for something like something else that comes to mind is if I was trying to get something out of a product, I would use the strainer to catch it. Something along those lines. If I was dredging, I would coat a food with a dry ingredient such as flour or maybe breadcrumbs or cornmeal or something like that. So fish comes to mind right off the bat. Chicken, I would dredge it in that. To flour something, to lightly dust a pan or meat with flour, sometimes confection or sugar or cornmeal. So like I remember last year when we did the pizzas, I used some cornmeal on the bottom. So I just kind of floured the bottom of the pan, or if we were doing, what else would we do? Like brownies or something like that, you might lightly flour the pan so that it doesn't stick. Gradually, slowly place a food into another food. So we sort of did that with the eggs where we did 1 egg at a time and we stirred it in. So we slowly placed 1 egg in the food. 2 that I'm going to add to this slide are blanch and al dente. So when you blanch something, it's a partial cooked like fruits and vegetables or nuts in boiling water or steam. So you're just blanching them. And then al dente, usually you're going to do your noodles al dente. So basically it means to the tooth, but it just means that it's like a firm consistency, not mushy and not like it snaps like it would if it was, partially cooked. So it's like right on that cusp where it's still firm, but it hasn't gone to that mushy side yet. So that's al dente. So if we ever did spaghetti or lasagna or something like that, we want those noodles to be firm because when they get mushy, they're kind of gross. So if you've ever overcooked pasta and you haven't liked it, it's probably that was the reason. So those are my 2 additions. Are we good? Anything in the chat? Put a 1 if you're not ready.
Nothing in the chat. You can go.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
All right. Okay, so we're getting close to the finish line here. Hang with me. So many terms though. Okay, so grease is to rubber spray the inside of your pan with shortening or cooking oil, obviously so the food doesn't stick. Ladle is to dip and serve a liquid or mixture of ingredients into a bowl. Melt, obviously to turn a solid into a liquid by heating it. If you pat or roll out something, so that would be, I'm trying to think what we made last year that we would have rolled out. Probably like the pie crust. We rolled that out, we formulated a ball, and then we used our rolling pin to flatten it out. We also did that with the Christmas cookies as well. So there's that. Puree to make food smooth and thick by placing them in a strainer, blender, or food processor. So you're really liquefying them, pureeing them. The other two that I added, one was marinade. And so you're basically putting the food in a liquid and it does help tenderize it. It's usually very flavorful. So there's a lot of seasonings in it. And you probably at least want to marinate it for at least 30 minutes if you can. Overnight would be awesome. Then it would really take on a lot of the good flavors. People will marinate anything from, a beef product to poultry to fish, sometimes vegetables even. So you're really using that liquid to penetrate, to tenderize, but also for flavor as well. And then when you're coating something, that means you are evenly coating the food with whatever it is. Batter, flour, breadcrumbs, cornmeal, fish batter. There's just so many things out there that you could coat a food with. So make sure you have those two incorporated in with your notes. And let me know if you're not ready and put a 1 in the chat.
You can move on.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so we are on our homeward stretch. So this will be our last set of terms. I do want to give honorable mention to Gavin because he was mentioning on his in his recipe, I think it was, tempering, and so I added that to the list because I should have said that the day I was cooking it. So thank you, Gavin. But anyway, as starting at the top, refrigerate is to put in the refrigerator. Makes sense. To spread is to distribute in a thin layer. Strain to separate solids from liquids. Sprinkle to scatter over something. Toss to mix ingredients lightly in a bowl by lifting them with 2 spoons or tongs and then placing them back in the bowl. So you're kind of like mixing it up in a way. Garnish to add visual appeal to a finished dish. So like, for example, trying to remember what I did. Trying to remember last year I garnished with something and now I can't remember what it was. Shoot. Anyway, I can't remember. Anyway, you can use, either seasonings for garnishes or something pretty that maybe is not, like last year I used something, I can't think of it right now, that I cut away from whatever we were using and then I used it as like a garnish to kind of heighten or make the plate look more appealing, like whether it be on the side of the plate or on top of the product. You can garnish it with sauces, things like that, that just add appeal and add flavor and, kind of draws in the person that's going to be eating it. And then tempering, thank you, Gavin, is when you keep eggs from cooking when they're added to a sauce. So that's his honorable mention right there. So Good job on that. And then I got 2 more slides, and then we'll start talking about our assignment. But I want to give you a chance to write in garnish and tempering so that you have that. And if you're not ready, you can put a 1 in the chat, and then Jenna will let me know.
We're all good.
Okay. All right. And then just a little bit on modifying a recipe. So by using multiplication or division, an individual can increase or decrease the size of a recipe to meet their needs. Okay, so a lot of recipes really are set up for 4 to 5 people. And so if you need to add more or less, then you would either have to divide or multiply. Remember, the yield is the number of servings a recipe makes. So how many people will it feed? That's kind of important to know. And I want to say, I think you have 1 fill-in on this screen. So hopefully you can grab that. And then the last screen with any notes on it whatsoever is the last one here. So baking pans, round, square, rectangle, they are used for reducing the original recipe in half. Should measure about half the original size. So, you know, if you are doing a sheet pan, that's like a full-on pan. But if you're going to do half, you would use the baking pan or a round pan or something like that. The oven temperature will remain the same with the baking time being slightly shorter, because if I'm cooking this amount versus this amount, you can kind of see that the oven temp will remain, but it may not take as long to cook a small baking pan versus the big sheet pan. Okay. Time work plans basically are a step-by-step process used to prepare a particular recipe. So you could kind of use your demonstration pages as your work plan. And then dovetailing is basically when you're trying to fit everything together and come out at the same time. So I'm sure some of your parents do that. So when you sit down, the chicken's still not in the oven and the vegetables sitting on the table. You want them both to come out at the same time so you can sit and have the chicken and the vegetable at the same time. And that's called dovetailing. Just trying to figure out, okay, I got to get the chicken in first because it takes the longest, and I have to figure out how much time that it's going to take, and then figure out how long the vegetables will take, and then plan accordingly. Okay, so that's when people are dovetailing. They're figuring that out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you know, it's all a work in progress. The next time you'll figure it out and make it work a little bit better for you. So your assignments are to answer this question, okay, and this is on that one document in Google Classroom where it's just some questions about the Google Slides. So it says, list 3 cooking terms that you were unfamiliar with from the long list, emphasize long, and then what cutting techniques do you think you will use most often? What mixing techniques, cooking techniques, and then I have the cooking terms worksheet I'm going to have you work on. So there's 2 things that I'm asking you to do, okay? So one is to finish the question for the Google Slides, and the second one is to do the worksheet on cooking terms. So I'm just going to kind of briefly go there so you can see what I'm talking about. So here is the cooking terms hunt. So I'm going to open that so you guys can see it real quick. Hopefully I linked it. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you're going to use your notes to figure out what definition matches up with what term, okay? And I want you to highlight the word. So you could put the word right here and highlight it. You could put it at the beginning of the number 1 and highlight it. But I want the answers highlighted because that's going to be easier to grade and for me to pick out whether or not you got it right, okay? Any questions on this part of the assignment? Can I either unmute or say your question in the chat? Otherwise, I'm going to assume that we're all good and I can go on to the next thing. Nothing? If something, go ahead, Jen.
There isn't anything.
Okay. And then the other part of this is the recipe questions. So we started on that the last time, and we answered these 4 questions. And then these were the questions that I just, asked you about right here. And it looks like I forgot some things. Mixing, what was the other one? Let me go back and see if I can figure it out. Mixing, cooking. Okay, that was it then. Okay. So cutting, mixing, and cooking. There we go. So cutting, mixing, and your cooking terms. Okay. Any questions on that? So you'll be turning this in and the terminology hunt, and that all is due tomorrow by midnight, 11:59 actually. So I am going to leave you to it as if I'm giving this to you in class. Here you go. You're going to sit and work on it till the bell, which is 2:30. So that gives you a little bit of time to work on it and get it turned in. So are there any questions? You can hang out. You can stick around and ask me. If you are having some frustration on anything in class, that's what I'm here for. So just kind of let me know. It's due, I think the deadline on it is Tuesday at 11:59 for Henry. So either stick around, I'm going to be here till 2:30. So you can stick around, you can come back if you have a question. I'm here. Just let me know what I can do to help.
Have a good day, Miss Epka.
Thanks, Jenna, for being MC today.
You're welcome.
Gavin, is he still? Oh, he left. Oh, Logan, and Jordan. Are you there? Aren't you there? Are you just tuning in and playing games while I'm teaching? Gavin. Oh, he was there. Shoot, okay. Jordan, Logan. I hope you know what your assignment is. I hope you were following along. I question it. Logan, Jordan, hello. If you're not going to be here, then you shouldn't be getting credit for being here. Jordan, Logan, are you there? Hello, hello. Fun talking to myself.